Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that helps to get my channel promoted, and I'd appreciate it. I also love it when people leave a comment. You know, if you have a suggestion for a video, or some constructive criticism, or just kind of what you think about things, let me know. I'm getting a late start today, and I'm kind of feeling like making something kind of simple but pretty at the same time. I've been meaning to make one of these for a while. I've made some similar earrings before, but it's going to have kind of a figure eight that interlaces with another kind of loop, and I've seen them called infinity knot necklaces before. I picked I think it's a 9mm Prasiolite to use as the stone for it, and it's got kind of a cool star cut. It's not a traditional round brilliant, so I think it's got a lot of fire to it. If you're not familiar with Prasiolite, Prasiolite is a heat-treated amethyst, and it turns kind of a pale green, so that's a nice color. I like it a lot. Before we get started, I wanted to thank some groups of people. I wanted to thank my patrons over on Patreon. They're kind of my core group of supporters. I truly appreciate not only their financial support, but also the great community that they've created over there, with both their friendliness and their willingness to share their knowledge. I really enjoy interacting with them over there. It's a nice group. I'm pleased to see them all sharing ideas and posting their work and you know, giving each other ideas. It's a great place. I really like it. The other group I wanted to thank is my YouTube subscribers, and I believe by the time I release this video we will be up to 12,700 or so if it continues to go up as it has. Thank you for that. That blows me away, and I'm really appreciative of that. I also really appreciate the kind words that you say in the comment section, as well as the super thanks and the buy me a coffees. Those really help with the raw materials right now because they're kind of expensive at this point. So thanks for that, and let's get started on this pendant. These are my design idea books, and there's a couple of, well, there's 3 or 4 different styles on the merch store. I've almost filled this one up here. I have found in recent times that I get a better outcome if I sketch up some ideas in advance. And so it helps me not only to clarify in my mind what I'm thinking about, but it also has this nice grid pattern in the background to help me keep things kind of symmetrical, because I'm not terribly, as you can see on my drawing here, I'm not terribly good at freehand stuff, but it does help to keep things sort of proportional. The newer ones have some conversion things on the back. This particular one has fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeters, because I know a lot of people in overseas watch and use millimeters. I've been trying to use the metric system more. Another one has wire gauge to millimeters, and that's handy for people overseas as well, I think, because I don't think they use the same wire gauges that we do. So check those out on the merch store if you're interested. So here's what I'm going to do. I pulled some 16 gauge round wire because I think that's about the right size. Here's this little Prasiolite. Well, not really little, it's a pretty good sized one. This is pretty, and it's got kind of a starburst pavilion on it, so it's got really kind of an interesting look to it. It's a nice stone. And I don't know if you can see on the camera, but it's got just a hint of green to it. This is a relatively pale one. So, but I think it's pretty, and I think it'll make a good central stone for this. You can see it's got basically a loop of wire that goes around the outside and then curls back on itself to form a bail, and then a figure eight that goes inside of that and wraps around part of that. And then the only other thing we'll do is right here under the stone, it's gonna have to be exactly the same diameter as the stone. I'm going to put some 16 gauge square wire, and we'll file it to a taper so the pavilion of the stone sits in there nicely. And then these prongs will add on top of this inner figure eight loop. So I don't think, as far as prong settings go, this one's going to be a super hard one to do. If you did it with a cabochon, this would be a beginner project, I would say. With making your own prong setting, probably more in the advanced category if you haven't done that before. So So I think to start with, I'm going to find that square wire, that 16 gauge square wire, and I'm going to make a little ring out of it that is just the same size as this stone. So we'll start there. You could wrap this around something round if you want to. One thing with square wire, which I use pretty frequently, I like the way it looks, but it tries to twist on you when you bend it because it's kind of stretching out this outside edge and compressing this inside edge, so it tries to turn sideways because it's easier to bend that way. And so you have to do some manual correcting as you're shaping it sometimes, otherwise you'll get kind of a twist in it. You can see right now it's still a little rim sticking out to the outside of the girdle of the stone. So we need to go a little bit smaller. Now we're starting to talk here. Okay, I'm going to cut it off a little bit bigger than where they come together there, so I can file them down nice. If you're new to my channel, I use primarily hard silver sheet solder and a liquid flux that I dribble on or spray on, depending upon my needs. My torch is a Smith Silversmith model, which is their acetylene air torch, and it's a great torch. I've been using it for years. I use a #1 tip. I get asked that pretty frequently. This doesn't have to be perfectly round at this point, not when we're just going to solder it together. Then we'll round it out the rest of the way after we do that. I have a little bit of solder here from the project I was working on yesterday. I just got my book put up on some other platforms if you're interested. The guide to my 2023 videos. It's an ebook that I made, and so now it's available. If you don't want to buy it on my merch store, you can get it on iBooks, or I think it should be on the Google Books pretty soon here, as well as some other platforms. I haven't gotten it yet. It's kind of a good guide to all of the videos I made in 2023, including some annotations I made about each project and a link to the video. So you have a whole bunch of projects all in one place for you. If you're interested, I'll put a link to it right there for you. Thank you to those people who bought it already. So when I set this on top of it like that, I don't want to see any silver, and that's pretty darn close. I think I'm going to be able to work with that. I need to get it a little rounder, maybe. The only reason I don't use round nose pliers for a lot of shaping is because, while the inner part is nice for getting the insides of jump rings and stuff circular, if you push too hard with the other end here, it comes into contact at kind of a single point in the middle, so it has a tendency to ding up the outside of your rings. So I do a lot of shaping without these sometimes, just using my chain nose pliers. Pretty good, I think. Fits right underneath the stone, and I can't see it sticking out too much. So that's good. Now we need to make, I think we need to make this piece of wire that goes around it like that. I'm going to probably connect it behind these other two wires where I solder it together. So I'm going to cut something that's a little longer than I think I need, off of this piece of 18 or 16 gauge round. And then we'll make it into kind of a, I guess, an elongated U shape to kind of wrap around this one. And then we'll start shaping it that way and stuff. Alright, so let's cut a piece of that, but we need to get a rough idea about how big a piece we need. Pretty close. That'll get me in the pretty close range, probably. So if I cut a piece that goes from here to about there, that should give me plenty to come back around and touch. Even calculating for some extra thickness in the thicker wire when it crosses over and stuff, I still think that'll give us plenty. So let's we'll use that as a guide for how long of a piece to cut. Alright, so let's start with about there. Let's do right about there. Never hurts to have a little extra. I think for the second one, I'm going to cut it just a little bit longer. Give myself a little extra room to work with. Hopefully that'll be long enough. Okay, to start with, I'm going to spend a little time getting this nice and straight so that it looks neat and unblemished when we're done, hopefully. Sometimes for videos, I'm a little leery of using Prasiolite, even though I really like the stone, because the color in it is so subtle, and with videos you always want to have a kind of a pretty thumbnail picture, and so sometimes it's hard to capture just how pretty it is with a photograph. That is a challenge when you're taking pictures of jewelry. I always at the end take some pictures in my light box, and sometimes we get something good that way. Sometimes we do some more under just a regular lamp on this, what do you call it? It's kind of got a marble base on it. It may be cast marble, I'm not sure, but it's a nice surface to take pictures on with a built-in light, and sometimes we can get some really nice ones in that light. But each piece is a little different when you're photographing jewelry. Especially when you're trying not to show the huge glaring mistakes that you make. At least that I make. Alright, where is that guy? Let's see if we can find one of these that's pretty close to that size. That's a little small. That's within range there, so I'm going to use that. But to do this, I'm going to find the center of this first. That's pretty close. Just using this to kind of shape the bottom part. So I want that to fit in there pretty snugly like that. That's not bad. But I also want this to be laying flat as it goes around there. So I'm going to need to make it so that this thing goes up like that while I solder this to the base. And then we can solder those together, I think. I may cut a little notch in there to make it a little bit, lay down a little flatter, but we'll see. Okay, maybe I don't need those. I'm going to leave it there just for giggles, but I'm going to solder that down. So I'm going to cut a little bit of solder. I didn't notice before I do a lot of pick soldering, where I pick up a little bit of solder on the end of this titanium pick. I'll heat the piece up to soldering temperature, and I'll stick it where I want it to go, and if I have it to the right temperature, it should jump right on there. It's a very useful skill. I find that once you learn it, it really improves, it increases the number of things you can accomplish. So if you're interested, check out this video here. It's a good general tutorial about that. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of this solder. I'm going to go kind of just like that. So I'm going to make a little bit of a mark right here where they cross. And I'm going to thin those out in between there with an abrasive wheel on my Dremel just to make them lay a little bit closer together. At least that's my plan, so I'll be right back. So let's, I got those thinned out a little bit so they cross nicely. Make sure that I like the configuration that I have. I don't want it to be a huge circle, but we do want it to have enough room to go around that other piece that we're going to put in here. That's probably going to be big enough. Where's that other piece though? Let's get this straight, and then we'll wrap that around and feed it through and see how it looks. That'll make it pretty easy to find the center of this one. So we need to make one that wraps around this thing now. And so let's find one that's a little bit bigger. That's pretty close. And I think we may need to cut this off and make an executive decision about how big to make this part. So I think it might be easiest, these ones, since I left this unsoldered so far, for now, straighten those back out like that. Gently, try not to ding them up too badly. We ought to be able to then keep this flat as we solder it in. I'm going to mark where this one crosses over since it's going to create a little bit of an issue. And then the spot between that right there. Yeah. So I'm going to thin that out with the Dremel again. I'll be right back. So you should be able to see, hopefully, that I thinned it out on the top here. And this is the underside over here for that spot. It's going to go right over that. So let's position them on there. It should get us pretty lined up so that X is centered in that. Pretty good. Adding a little bit of solder to the side. Don't want that solder seam to go up about the same distance. Okay, now I just want to make sure that those are soldered in those spots so they don't shift too much on me. Get these two soldered together nicely. Looking pretty decent. And now we need to bring these around. Bring these ones back around like this, behind it. I think I'm going to just solder it like that. I'm going to stare at it for a minute to make sure it's not too crooked. Sometimes things look crooked after you're done and you're like, ah. Should we use the bail making pliers to make the bail? I think I'm going to cut them a little bit shorter so I can kind of butt it right against the back of that one. I kind of like how that came together. So I'm going to solder that closed. And then we'll add some prongs. What do you think? Got our little pendant going on here. And it looks like, I want to put some prongs kind of right here, here. So let's cut a couple more pieces of this 16 gauge. Need it to be, we're going to make an X out of these and then make it into kind of an upside down basket and mount them on there. I think, like I said, you could put a cab in a standard bezel right in there. That would look also very nice, I would imagine. I was thinking today about maybe doing an insect pendant, but I haven't done an insect thing for a while. My theme over on Patreon this month is summertime stuff. So anything that you associate with summertime is a prompt for them. That would have been a good one for that. We'll see, I may come back to that. I'm going to use that as a guide where to bend these downwards. I need to cut them all off the same length. So they're going to be a little bit different because one of them overlapped the other one. So really I just need to play with the shape of these until those sit right on those black dots there. Kind of make sure everything's touching there. This one is elevated over there, so I'm going to file this one just a little bit off. Let's see if we can't do it there. I'll give it a shot anyway. As long as I don't bump it too much. I could have sweated a little bit of solder onto the bottom of each of these. That might not have been a bad idea. But what are you going to do? I'm done except for pickling and polishing and setting the stone. So I'm going to pickle this. And then I'll come back and we'll finish it. So I've got things kind of polished up, and I popped the stone in there after I cut the tops of these off, and I bent it over so it stopped moving, and it's relatively sitting kind of how I want it to sit. And I do this differently than some people, but I'm going to use this to set it. And it's my chain nose pliers. But in order to lay these prongs down better, I'm going to snip these off a little bit shorter, not to their final length, but just so that I can push them down without them running into each other. And I use the flat part of this to kind of like lay it down against there. So at this point, I usually, this area between the girdle and the table facet on top, called the girdle facets, and I usually cut these prongs off about midway up that slope, depending upon how the stone is cut, but we'll just kind of midway there. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Dremel or whatever rotary tool you have with an abrasive white wheel, and I'm going to shape those into points. And then I'm going to push them down the rest of the way with the side of this thing and make sure, kind of burnish them with the rounded outer part here to make sure they're laying down tight. And then I'll probably use a fine silicone polishing wheel, the blue ones, to kind of smooth it out on top. And then I'll just use a polishing cloth to buff it up, and I'll put it on a chain and take some better pictures. So I think that'll turn out to be pretty. So. Alright, well that was the figure 8 pendant, or the infinity knot pendant, depending upon what you want to call it. And if you enjoyed that, make sure to hit the like button before you leave, and take a moment and check out a few of my other videos. I have a whole bunch of playlists you can peruse the channel with. You can search the channel for individual projects. I'm getting close to 350 videos. I think I'm one video away from 350 if I remember right. So that's a lot of content, and I think you're bound to find something that you like there, whether you're a beginner, an intermediate kind of person, or an advanced silversmith. There's definitely, even if you already know how to do everything, there might be some good ideas for projects there. So check it out, subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit the video description down below for some important links, like the if you want to buy my ebook, which is the guide to the 2023 videos. There's a link there for that. There's also a link to my merch store where you can get one of those design idea books. Those are handy to have. And there's a link to the Patreon site if you want to check out that community over there. It's really nice. There's a link to the Buy Me a Coffee page if you wanted to help with a little influx of cash. So I appreciate those kind of things. Thanks for coming. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Take care. Happy silversmithing.